Peter Nice groaned, his voice weak but insistent, each word dragging itself out of his throat like it might be his last. Take me to my farmhouse. They don't know about me. I was never part of Paul's crew. No one questioned it. No one had the time or energy to. Shania was too focused on keeping him from bleeding out, her hands pressed against the wound, slick with his blood. It seeped through her fingers, warm and unrelenting, a grotesque reminder that his life was slipping away with every second. Her hands trembled, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. Edwin drove in silence, his grip tight on the wheel, his jaw clenched hard enough to crack a tooth. He'd driven through these roads 1,000 times before, but never like this. Icon sat beside him, staring at the GPS on his phone, navigating through back roads, his voice a monotone hum. They were heading toward the countryside, further and further from the city, from the neon lights, from the streets they knew. The darkness thickened around them, swallowing the world whole, leaving only the winding road and the whisper of trees shifting in the night. The farmhouse loomed before them, barely visible in the dim glow of the headlights. It was old, isolated, a place abandoned by time itself. When they carried Peter inside, the weight of recognition settled over them like a thick fog. "Mr. Nice," Xavier muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "The mattress guy, the gun show guy." Vivian's eyes narrowed, her expression hard, unreadable. Didn't he disappear after some abuse scandals? No one had the time to unpack it. They laid Peter on a dusty bed, the mattress sagging beneath his weight, the air thick with the smell of old wood and something stale, something forgotten. Shania barked orders, her voice sharp with urgency. "We need to get him to hospital. He won't last the night. That puts all of us at risk," Icon countered, his voice cold, his expression unreadable. The room fell into silence. Heavy. Suffocating. They all knew the truth. They weren't just deciding Peter's fate, they were deciding their own. If they took him to a hospital, questions would follow. Blood tests. Police reports. And Peter, even in his half-conscious state, understood that better than anyone. Then, Peter coughed, his body convulsing with the effort, his voice ragged as he forced out the words that would change everything. "I killed Paul." Time stopped. No one spoke. No one even breathed. The weight of those words crashed over them like a wave, drowning them in the sudden, unbearable realization of what they had just heard. That night, Peter continued, his voice shaking, raw. "That rundown apartment. I went looking for a hooker, thought Paul was a pimp. He didn't look like one, but I was. Hi, I don't know why, but I stabbed him. I ran. I thought the hooker, Lara, would call a hospital, but she left him to rot." Vivian's fists clenched, her nails digging into her palms. Her godfather. Paul. The only real family she had ever known. Gone. Because of this man. Shania's hands twitched at her sides. She wanted to let him bleed out. Just sit back and let karma take its course. Xavier and Edwin. They wanted him dead. No hesitation. No second thoughts. Just cold, clean vengeance. Aiken's voice shattered the silence. "You want revenge now? Now? Where were you when Paul needed help? Did you ever ask if he was okay? If he was coping?" He turned to Edwin, his eyes burning with accusation. "You knew him for decades. Did you ever ask?" Vivian flinched as his gaze landed on her. "You were his goddaughter, did you? Then Shania. Then Xavier. You owed him your lives. But did you ever check in? Did you ever wonder if he needed someone? No, you didn't. And now you want to play judge, jury, and executioner." No one spoke. Because there was nothing to say. Because Icon was right. Paul had been slipping through the cracks for years, drowning in his own demons, and no one had reached out a hand to pull him back. And now he was dead. And the man who killed him was lying in front of them, his life hanging by a thread, waiting for them to decide whether to cut it or let him live. Peter's breath hitched. He was barely conscious now, slipping in and out of the world, his blood staining the sheets beneath him. His eyes fluttered open, just for a moment. Just long enough to see the people surrounding him, their faces contorted with grief, with rage, with something deeper than hatred, regret. "Decide," Icon whispered, his voice softer now. "Whatever the night brings, let's hope it brings Paul's soul some peace."